when we saw a real steep rise in poverty. That's the recession We just got this new data point in December. So in 2016, the child poverty rate was 23.1%, and we're now down to 21.5%, and we're getting closer to the national average. So it's moving in the right direction. It's good news that it went down, but more than 1 in 5 children in Georgia still lives in poverty. I also pulled the percent low birth weight first, and this is one that Georgia Family Connection and other partners kind of focus on because it speaks to a child's health, but it can also really speak to the overall maternal health of the community and the state. And so unfortunately, this year we saw our low birth weight rate rise for, I think, the 3rd year in a row. So that's something that we kind of want to look at and say, what's going on with maternal and child health that we're seeing this particular indicator go in the wrong direction. And so that is 9.9%, which means almost 1 in 10 babies born in Georgia is born low birth weight. And low birth weight is 5.5 pounds or lower. Yeah. I was almost low birth weight. I squeezed it under the wire. I also told children with a substantiated incidence of abuse and neglect, and you can see there's been some variability over the last 5 years or so. One thing to note about this particular indicator is that it's really sensitive to policy changes, and that's policy with safety, and also policy with mobility in more programmatic ways. But the good news is that between 2015 and 2017, there has been a decline in children with a substantiated incidence of abuse and or neglect. And that's the percentage of children, not the percentage of incidents. Percent children without health insurance. So the indicators I've already showed you, those are state agency data. This is actually a Census Bureau survey indicator, and it's one of those indicators that goes into making up the annual range that we get. So from about 2013 to 2016, we saw a decline in the rate of children without health insurance, and then this year was 2016 to 2017 was the first time we've really seen a very slight increase in children without health insurance. And so for those of you who can't see, in 2017, 7.8% of Georgia's children did not have health insurance. I also pulled teen births, and you can obviously see there's a long-term dramatic decline in our teen birth rate here in the state of Georgia. That does mirror national trends, but Georgia's rate of decline actually outpaced the nation for several years, and so we're getting very close to the national average on this particular indicator. And now moving into for the health and safety, I also pulled the 9th grade students reporting perception of negative risk with alcohol consumption, and this is one where we want that to be really high. We want our 9th graders to have a negative perception of risk with alcohol. So you can see, after a decline for several years, we're seeing a 2-year uptick in the perception of children who have a negative perception with alcohol. So that's a good thing. That's moving in the right direction. I also pulled, I think last year when I was here, I showed the pre-K data, so I decided to change it up and show some of the progress that's been made with the Poly Rated program over the last 4 years. So you can see in 2014, the numbers are very small, but that's just over 5% of child care centers and family care homes were rated and quality rated, and in 2017 that number was up to 27%. And now moving into sort of the education sphere, we did that with Poly Rated and now kind of the K-12 indicators. I pulled 3rd grade students achieving proficient learner or above on milestone English and Arts assessment. We know this is a really important indicator because, as many people in this room probably know, 3rd grade reading is where you go from reading to learn to learning to read in 4th grade. So it's really, really critical that our children can read proficiently by the end of 3rd grade. So you can see after, there was kind of an expected decline between 2015 and 2016, the first 2 years that the ELA milestones was administered, but we've seen a rebound over the last 2 years, and now we're at 37.4% of Georgia's children who can read proficiently by the end of 3rd grade. So there's still a long way to go, but that trend's moving in the right direction. And then I pulled percent of students who graduate from high school on time, kind of continuing on that life cycle of the child. And so you can see, back in 2011, which is when our trend line first starts, our high school graduation rate was only 68%. And today, in 2017, it was 81.6%. So that's a really, really pretty solid, significant increase in a fairly short amount of time. That big jump that you see between 2014 and 2015, I believe is when we eliminated the high school graduation test, which is obviously going to increase high school graduation rates. However, we have still continued to see an improvement even after that. So that's good news. And it's really kind of significant to get above that 80% on-time graduation rate. So good news for Georgia. But again, still a ways to go zero, because that still means 19% of kids still graduate on time. And then this is my last slide, and it's percentage of teens not in school and not working, and this is another one of those Census Bureau survey indicators that makes up our national ranking. So this is one where we want to see the number going down. We want our teens to be connected either to school or to work. And so you can see, we hit our high in 2012 of over 11% of students in Georgia not in school and not working, and now that number is down to 8.6%. So again, there's still a ways to go. It's moving in the right direction. Cautious optimism is kind of the takeaway that I get from a lot of these data, and just knowing that this is where we are, and so let's make sure that we continue to move in the right direction by working together. I don't know why I put that in there, but if you ever have any questions, this is how to reach me, and so. You know, what's okay, listening
So hi everybody, I'm Molly McKinney. I'm the advocacy director for Georgia Children. I think I know most of you guys. At this moment, I would like for our elected officials and our agency heads to take the stage and that you are comfortable. So just a heads up, as Erica said, this is sort of what I call the lazy Susan panel approach, because we have so many competing scheduling things for our legislative board that there's unequal in this process. So I, you guys ready to win and take your little solo here. But I love this part. I love Rebecca's part too, but very quick part. Very quick part. So some of the folks that you'll see on your agenda will be here. We'll have some extra folks who are not on your agenda who are coming by in the course of this process. And a number of folks have had to decline at the last minute because unfortunately we've had an important member of South of one of the House members passed away the first day of session. And the original thing. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on. It's just a complicated thing. But we filled the chairs pretty nicely, actually. So that we have those chairs. Probably the most efficient way is to see if anyone has a time crunch in the next half hour on the panel. We're going to say, so let's go ahead and start and pass the mic. Title relevant issues that they should coming to second and what they would like for all of us to pay attention to and to help them out. So I'm the way that I'm going to find out.
Holly didn't tell me how much time I have, so I'm going to count on her to wave her hand when I'm done. I'm Mary Margaret Oliver. I'm a member of the House, I've been a member of the Senate, I've been out of politics, I go back and forth, but I am very, very happy to say that I've been a child advocate for my entire political career, and I'm here today to ask some questions of y'all, for you to help me make some judgments, and also to highlight one or two things. I'll not highlight maybe the most important legislative act, which I believe Tom Rollins will highlight for us, is how Georgia becomes compliant with the new federal law, which is fairly significant in terms of how we spend our child welfare money, particularly in relation to children brought into care. I will tell you a couple of things that I'm interested in and working on, and then I'll ask you two questions for you to consider. I've been approached by a national advocacy group, and this is kind of my world right now. They're national advocacy group who are interested in the issue of forced marriage of 16 and 17-year-olds, which they believe is happening in Georgia in a wide variety of scenarios. They've done a tremendous amount of work on looking at marriage license and what marriage license data to see how many 16-year-olds who are under Georgia law allowed to marry are marrying men maybe 20 years older than them or 30 years older than them. And in my conversations with juvenile courts, judges, they have seen this phenomenon. There's going to be legislation brought forward, I think, by a very, very well-respected Republican lawyer friend of mine, is a representative, and I'm going to co-sponsor that with him on making some examination of forced marriage for 16-year-olds who are in custody of the state of Georgia, perhaps, or who are in circumstances where their own ability to make a decision in marriage is not appropriate. I have been talking for a couple of years on what Georgia's policy is in relation to 17-year-olds in Georgia, all of whom are prosecuted as adults. There are only 4 states left where the state prosecutes minors, 17-year-olds or minors, as adults for all criminal offenses. There's a tremendous amount of activity to take that number of 4 down to 0. And what I've said to the leaders of the state, do you want Georgia to be the last that prosecutes minors as adults for all criminal offenses? I'll give you one data point that's interesting about this issue. In 2017, the GBI data, which I believe, reported an arrest of 6,521 17-year-olds who were arrested. They have a permanent arrest record, and they have a mugshot, and that will be with them, even though they're minors, treated as adults. There are only 65 17-year-olds in the adult correction system, and 26 of those are what we call the 440 teenagers who have committed serious crimes. My question, the data analysis that we should be doing, what happened to the 6,521 17-year-olds? About 4,800 were committed only misdemeanors, and the 1,200 or so plus that committed felonies. Where did they go? How many days did they spend in one of our 300 jails? How much school did they miss? Was that the only criminal offense of their life that's given them a permanent arrest record? It's an issue I'm going to continue to talk about. I've introduced legislation that's been predominantly signed by Republican legislators, and hopefully take that issue forward, because I believe that Georgia should not be the last state in the country that prosecutes minors for all criminal offenses. And here's my question to Mel. I think Georgia, of the top 10 most populated states, has the highest child poverty rate. I've been saying that. We're the 10th or 11th. We're in the top 10 most populated states. And are we the highest child poverty rate? I've been saying that, tell me if I'm right. Next, I want y'all to tell me how we are going to prevent the deaths of 2 children who disappeared. What's the definition of disappeared? And were buried in the backyard. In every case, down in Effingham, I believe it was, the case that's been haunting me these last 2 weeks. In every case where a child is found dead who's been isolated, allegedly homeschooled, allegedly disappeared from the neighborhood, in every case, there's a neighbor who will say to the press, I knew something was wrong. My challenge to you is, how are we going to get that neighbor who knows something is wrong when the child disappears, when the child is allegedly homeschooled? How are we going to prevent the death or murder of that child?
Thank you. My name is Mandy Ballinger, and I am a Republican. I've been serving in the Georgia House since 2013. I've worked on a lot of kind of child welfare issues. I was very pleased last year. I was in 2018. I was part of the inaugural class of the National Conference of State Legislators Child Welfare Fellows program that they have. So that really gave me the opportunity to look across the nation at what they're doing in the area of child welfare. So I look forward to introducing some legislation. I'm not going to take as long as Mary Margaret. I haven't been doing it as long as Mary Margaret, so I don't know what to say. But Mary Margaret is my seatmate in the House, so she has been very busy educating me since I came to sit by her. So I do look forward to efforting some legislation. I think that we are, very financially reliant on our federal partners for our funding in child welfare in the state of Georgia. And I think that's something that we're all kind of, trying to cope with at the state level. It's reliance and kind of how we're going to come into compliance with Families First. So that's obviously a big issue. And I've spoken at these, I think maybe this is my third year, Holly? This is my third year, fourth year? Fourth year. Okay, and every year, y'all are like, I want your card, I'm going to talk to you about what's going on, I'm going to talk to you, there's this issue, but I really think we need to do something at the state level. You know how many people have contacted me in 4 years? None. So y'all, let me know. I'm not on the front lines. Once upon a time I was a child advocate with the prosecuting attorney's office. I do sit on a couple of boards for child welfare agencies, but I'm not on the front lines anymore. And I rely on y'all to tell me what's working, what's not working on this front line so that we can make it better for Georgia. So let's partner together. Call me, write me, send me an email. Let me know. So I appreciate that. So that's my challenge to you. I don't have a question, but I do have a challenge. Y'all let me know how we can make it better. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Trammell. It's my privilege and honor to be the Democratic leader in the Georgia House. Thanks for being here. I just want to touch briefly on a couple of initiatives that our caucus has that are broader than child welfare, but that certainly intersect the issue of child welfare. I mean, first priority for us is going to be Medicaid expansion. While children are certainly covered and eligible, and that's a great thing, all too many times their parents aren't and are ineligible for any type of coverage and can't get insurance. Georgia, unfortunately, is one of the states that leads the nation in uninsured population, and that has a real impact on families and children. The second thing, obviously, in the education space, we were pleased last year's budget, fully funding quality-based education, and we certainly support that in our caucus. We want to see that. But third, I want to tell you about an issue that we have to do something as General Assembly, and that is the issue of gun violence. Gun violence is a serious threat to our children, not just our children, but the reality of mass shootings and school shootings. We cannot stick our heads in the sand and pretend that it doesn't impact. And I just want to tell you a brief anecdote about a conversation that I had with my sister this fall. My sister and my two nephews and my sister's husband, they live in Cobb County. And one day he came home from middle school, and they had been through an active shooter training in the middle school. And if you've ever been through an active shooter training, you know that there are the three basic things that you do. If you can run, you run. If you can't run, you hide. And if you can't run or hide, you have to stay and fight. Run, hide, fight. He's been through this training exercise. He came home and he asked my sister, Mom, if there's an active shooter in my school, should I run? Or if I get an instruction from the teacher that we're to hide in the classroom, should I hide in the classroom? Now, how does a mom answer an 8th grader's question like that? This is a serious child welfare issue that impacts all of our children in Georgia. Our caucus intends to address common sense, gun safety initiatives this session, and we have to have these conversations. We owe it to Georgia's children.
I'm so sorry to jump in line and thank you, but thank you for this incredible opportunity to be with you here today, see so many friends in the room. My name is Chuck Epstration. I represent House District 104 in Gwinnett County, Tequila, and Lawrenceville. It's my 6th session. I know I've worked with you on many issues in the past. This year, I'm continuing the effort that we've engaged in over the past few years to end human trafficking in the state of Georgia and stopping domestic minor sex trafficking has to be a top priority and continue to be a top priority for our state. And I have encouraging news for you here today. In anticipation of the Super Bowl coming to Atlanta, we've seen an incredible engagement and partnership between law enforcement, DFACS, the court system here in Fulton County. We've seen really great work occurring right now that we'll be announcing and speaking more about in the coming days. But also, we have really an impressive coalition of legislators who are working together across party lines, who are going to send a clear message that human trafficking in Georgia will not be tolerated. Heather Stockdale's here today. Heather, where are you? There's Heather with Georgia Cares, an incredible partner who I've been honored to work with in this project, and many of the legislators who are up here before you. Issues important to children in our state are a priority for Republicans and Democrats. I can commit to you that we will focus on these issues going forward, and ending domestic minor sex trafficking is also at the top of the list this year. So thank you so much for having me today. I'm sorry I'm stacked, so I'm going to have to go, but please reach out to us if you'd like to contact us. Thank you.
All right, let's resume with the evening folks.
Good afternoon, I'm Tom Rollins. I'm currently the interim director for the Division of Family and Children's Services. A couple of things. First off, let's talk about some things that are kind of on the radar. You saw some of the data earlier. Senator Stration was talking about the issue of minor sex trafficking. A lot of those children who are trafficked come out of, unfortunately, our foster care system across the country. We have been working very hard the last year, hand in hand with the GBI especially, to, as soon as we have a child who may run away from foster care, to immediately start looking for that child, work with the GBI to identify that child, and to get that child back in our custody. The other thing you may have noticed, we talked about the rising graduation rates, on-time graduation rates for children in our state, youth in our state. I think we know that our foster care children, we have 13,556 children under 18 and about another 700 who are in our 18 to 21 category who are still in our care. And our foster care graduation rates, because a lot of these children go through, they move from home to home, they've been removed from their home, they may have had gaps in their education. They are not graduating on time. So we've been working very closely with Multi-Agency Alliance for Children, and I think that maybe not from our agency, but I think you're going to see some efforts, perhaps in the legislature this year, but also from our agency to try to really boost those foster care graduation rates. In general, we, of course, are waiting for the budget to come out tomorrow. I can tell you we gave a presentation, but of course we're sort of waiting for the new administration to tell us what sort of more of their direction for our budget. But the things we're really focusing on are, number one, because of the numbers of children who are in care, we continue to need additional funds to support children who are either in foster care or in group homes. Secondly, of course, I think probably Representative Oliver mentioned it, we really are working hard between now and October of 2020 to implement the Family First Prevention Services Act, which is the biggest change in child welfare law at the federal level, certainly at the state level, in at least 30 years. It will give us the opportunity to front-load services in the community, especially substance abuse, mental health, parenting assistance services for to try to keep these families together. It also fits into our model of having the child surrounded by the parent, surrounded by the extended family, surrounded by the community, and then have the state supporting the efforts of all of those to help children. So we want to look at sort of an expanded family preservation program. We're doing more in terms of trying to keep children either with their parents, with these services in place, or with relatives. We also, of course, are going to be working very closely with our partners in the provider community in the coming year or so to help them adjust to the changes that the Family First Prevention Services Act will require so that they can become either one of the approved providers, and in fact we need lots of really good providers, especially for our victims of sex trafficking, for our children with behavioral health and developmental disability issues. So those are the things we're going to be really focusing our legislative and our policy agenda on making those changes to fit with that law. I think the one thing that Representative Oliver challenged me on here, and I'm going to put me on the spot, but while we certainly don't know everything that's happened publicly in the Effingham County case yet, we do know that isolation of children is the danger. We have a system in which the family is a fundamental unit. We don't want to intrude on families unless we have good reason to, but at the same time, our system is set up such that we have to rely on family members, on the community, on community services, community organizations to help us identify those children who are isolated. And I think in terms of a policy agenda and a legislative and a community and a philanthropic agenda, what we need to be looking at is how can we build in each community across the state of Georgia, whether it's in Metro Atlanta or in, South Georgia where I'm from. How can we build community organizations that will keep an eye on these children? And so that if the child's not, certainly if the child's in school, that's the best place to keep the child, an eye on the child. If the child's being homeschooled or not in school for some reason, some other organization the child will pass through. So it's currently our agency's State of Hope program is an effort to start building at the community level those types of organizations. I think we've got a long way to go on that, but I'm looking forward to working with you on that issue in the years to come. So I'm sure that many more of all of you will be asking me lots more questions in the coming months.
Thank you, Holly and Voices of Children, for hosting this event. I think this is my third or fourth year attending this event, by the way. And every year I get something out of it, and every year she pushes me to do more. So thank you for that. One thing that I'd like to share with you is some work that Voices of Children has been doing, working with legislation that I passed a couple of years ago. And this legislation creates a unique certification for school resource officers, and it's underneath police officer standards training. And it had a 2-year kind of set aside, if you will, and that was enough time for District to get up to speed and to create some programs so that the typical training for an SRO, which in the past was about a 4-week program, is now doubled. And I am happy to report that we are on schedule with that program to be kind of the first in the nation in having a unique certification under police for school resource officers. And we have Holly and Georgia Appleseed and Brian Clinton to thank for that. So you all are representatives. Thank you for that effort, and thank you for your good work on moving this particular project forward. I believe that's going to benefit a lot of students in all of our classrooms from the the elementary all the way up to high school level. And that's kind of been what I've worked on the last 15 years that I've been in the General Assembly. If it was something dealing with school resource officers or student discipline or anything related to kids and trying to keep kids from hopping on that, as we quote, that prison pipeline. So that's been the thrust of my work, and as long as I continue to serve in this body, I will continue to do that good work. So thank you all again for collaborating with me and for all the good work that you're doing. I am excited to be part of this meeting today.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Davidson. I am currently serving as the interim director at the Office of the Child Advocate. We are statutorily designed as an oversight and ombudsman office for child welfare. So of course we're interested in all things abuse and neglect and preventing that. So we of course support all of those efforts. We're a relatively small office. We have a team of investigators that will investigate complaints that we receive mostly from the community, involving children in foster care. Just as background, I started out my career in child welfare, representing children in DeKalb County, and sort of am a child advocate at heart. And I have also had some experience working at DFACS, and so we work closely with DFACS on a lot of their efforts, a lot of our efforts. One of the things that we are interested in ramping up and have started some efforts towards is really around youth engagement. And, you know, a lot of what we do affects youth, and so we really believe that youth need to be at the table and really informing a lot of what we do and want to hear directly from them. To that extent, we put forth a monthly newsletter, and each month we try to have a piece that is written by a youth or some sort of artwork that a youth has done. And so if you all are familiar with any youth who is involved in foster care, who might have an interest in submitting a piece for that, we would certainly love to have that. We are otherwise looking forward to collaborating with all of you, with the legislature, with Governor Kemp, and please reach out to us. We are always happy to help. So thank you very much for everything that you guys do as well.
Good afternoon. I'm State Representative Valencia Stovall of House District 74, which covers the areas in Clayton County. And I thank Polly and Voices for Children for all of their work that they do diligently year-round. So even though when we're not in session, I'm still receiving information from them to keep me updated on what's going on in the world of children. I wanted to let you know one of the things that my office will be definitely pushing for is continuing to fight for the quality of life of our children. And that's from birth all the way to the age out of our school system. And it's important for us to make sure that they have that foundation so we're not paying for it later once they become an adult. And so some of the pieces of legislation I'll be introducing. One deals with open enrollment, which allows a student to attend school anywhere in the state of Georgia without a zone, without having to get permission for school zoning. Also, child entertainers, excuse absences. Many of our children that are on the set do have a studio teacher that is present on the set, but the ones who students are still enrolled in our local, in our traditional schools are being marked absent, as if they are not receiving any education. And so this legislation would just say that if they're to prove that they have been receiving education on that set, then they would be excused absent, and they won't receive those letters that say you missed 5 days and then you have to come before the court to answer to it. The next one is dealing with video cameras in special needs classroom, and I appreciate Voices for Children support back in 2016. The issue now is that we only have a very few number of schools that have actually placed those video cameras in the classrooms of special needs students that are self-contained. And so I'm reintroducing the bill, that would now make it mandatory for those cameras in the classroom. And also there's a concern with the mobility rate of children in our schools. And one of the issues with mobility rate is when you are a family of low income and you just miss one check, or you have a job that's not paying enough, you end up getting evicted. And so then you're jumping from here, you're going here, and the whole time is unstable for our kids, and the education cannot be continued. So we're definitely looking at something dealing with tenant rights when it comes to that. And senior supporting education is a project that I'll be working on as well. And also doing a best of the best education bus tour. I believe that in order for you to see what quality looks like, you have to be able to go and visit those schools. But the kicker is, we're looking for schools that have had challenges. and have figured out a way how to overcome those challenges when it comes down to delivering quality education. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Sam Park. I represent House District 101, which includes the cities of Lawrenceville, Suwanee, and Gwinnett County. So I wanted to briefly talk about 3 issues that I'll be working on and paying attention to over this coming legislative session. The first, of course, is Medicaid expansion, as Leader Trammell had mentioned. I think it's important to understand the broad impact that Medicaid expansion has in the state of Georgia, particularly in terms of helping us combat the maternal mortality rates by ensuring that hospitals in rural Georgia stay open and continue to serve the communities around them. The second issue is the Earned Income Tax Credit. Last year, I introduced a bill along with Representative Schofield and Senator Alina Parent had introduced this issue in the Senate. But of course, the Earned Income Tax Credit at the federal level has been shown to be one of the most effective anti-poverty measures and has helped reduce child poverty rates across the country. Hopefully, we'll be able to make progress on this issue at the state level, not this year, but going forward as well. During my first term, I was elected in 2016. I also introduced a study committee to see how we can expand access to pre-K and after-school programs, given the importance of early childhood education and break the school to prison pipeline. For any of those issues, but particularly that study committee, please reach out to me if I could be of any service, but also if you have any ideas. I think especially when trying to invest in the next generation, let's think creatively in terms of how we can increase access to those services. So thank you so much for allowing me to share a few words, and I look forward to working with y'all to invest in the next generation of Georgia. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Brass. I'm a state senator from Newnan. I represent Coweta County, part of Truth County, part of Carroll County, all of Heard County, and a little small piece of Fulton County. So I cover basically the west side of the state. But I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about education. Representative Stovall touched on that a little bit, but I was honored to serve on a study committee over the interim, and we really looked at dyslexia. And I believe it was Rebecca. There was 2 stats you pulled up that I'd like to touch on as well, and that's 3rd grade reading level and high school dropout. And one thing we learned during the study committee is that anywhere from 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 children are affected by dyslexia. Think about those numbers. And a lot of them correlate with a lot of the 3rd grade reading, and a lot of that transfers down to high school dropout. And so what we learned was it's not necessarily, we don't have to treat it like a disability or as a disability. But what we do need to understand is it's a different way of learning. Children process things in a different manner, children with dyslexia and other similar learning abilities like that. So what we're doing, what our study committee has recommended is we're going to look at a bill that will, number one, is going to define what dyslexia is. If you look through Georgia code, you look through Georgia regulation, you will not find the word dyslexia. It is nowhere. So number one, we have to identify it. We have to identify what it is, and then we have to figure out how we're going to address these children. So another thing we learned is in our curriculum for our teachers, they're not spending any time on it. So they're not learning what the red flags are. They're not learning how to identify it. So we're going to make that as part of the core curriculum. And then we're also, we're going to have some funding for pre-screening. We will start pre-screening our recommendation was at the preschool level. From a funding hurdle, I think we're probably going to go more target at the kindergarten level. And I think we're going to start to capture more kids, identify them earlier with dyslexia, and again with similar learning abilities. So that is one thing that I hope we will start to see an increase in the 3rd grade reading level, and in turn we're going to start to see a decrease, or a continued decrease, because we're headed in the right direction. It's just we've got to fill in some of the gaps. So with that, I appreciate all y'all being out here. Thank you, Polly, for your leadership and all that you do. You know, and as y'all have heard, we have a wide variety of interests and bills and ideas. And the truth is, just about everything we do up here affects a child somewhere. And so I think it's important that we all keep that in mind. And I think it's obvious that we do, and we will continue to do so. So thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am State Representative Kim Schofield. I represent the best district in the world, District 60, including parts of the city of East Point, College Park, Hapeville, Southeast Atlanta, and Forest Park. And so a couple of bills that I'm working on, and I just first want to thank Polly because I've known her for over 10 years. I've been involved in a number of child advocate projects with her, and she's just amazing. Never gets tired. She's like the Energizer Bunny. And I work with a lot of you others in this room, so it's good to see you. But a couple of bills that I'll be working on that are very important. I'm working with one of my colleagues, Representative Deborah Buckner, in the House on it's called the Stomp Bill. It's actually going to stop tax on menstrual products. So that is a companion to something I started earlier this year that is called Got You Covered, period. And it looks at, and it really is, I'm supplying kits to middle, high school, and kids in foster care that will supply menstrual products as well as undergarments. And working with a number of national advocacy groups that are doing period poverty and other menstrual health, and this has really become a problem, especially in Title I schools. So I want to make sure that not only do they have the resources that they need, but that we're teaching kids about their bodies and teaching them in a healthy way. And they're being shamed and bullied behind this. And so that's one of the things that I'm working on. Another initiative is more involved with environmental health and factors. There are just certain toxics that are in consumer products, especially when it comes to children, that are affecting our children. So I'll be looking at some legislation around that. And then the third thing that I'm working on is last summer I do a lot of advocacy work, and my background is healthcare, but specifically lupus, a chronic disease that affects not only men, women, but definitely we're seeing a rise with children. And so last year I educated all the school nurses across the state about lupus and how to recognize signs and symptoms. This year, we're working with a couple of in Fulton and Clayton County, Fulton and Cobb County, that will be doing a transition plan from childhood to adult for lupus, so that it helps not only just families, but as they continue to grow with this disease, that they learn how to be educated and really step into their space of what we can do to help. So I welcome, just like my colleagues, you to join me. I have a lot of fun in what we do. We do some very serious work, but I like to do it on a very fun level. So if you remember nothing else about me, and everybody who knows me knows what I'm going to say, Kim stands for Keep It Moving.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm Senator Elena Parent, and I represent North and Central DeKalb County in the State Senate, District 42. A couple of things that relate to families and kids that I'm focused on for this session. First, I apologize for coming in a few minutes late, so I don't know if someone already called out the fact and gave us a little bit of a pat on the back for the fact that we did fully fund the education formula for the first time in about 16 years last year. And that really is a very big deal, and I think that it's very fundamental to many of the things that we are talking about. We need to make sure that we keep doing it and don't slide backwards. I also appreciate Governor Kemp's highlighting the teacher pay issue. I do think it's important that we pay our teachers commensurate with the important work that they do. Without teachers, everything else about our economy and kids, can you imagine the gap? So we need excellent teachers. We need to show them that we value them. And I appreciate the call that we do need to step up our pay scale with regards to Georgia teachers. One of the things that I've been working on that I'm very focused on relates to the lack of availability of quality care, quality affordable care for kids. And this impacts parents, of course, at a very high level, because many are spending huge parts of their take-home pay on care. And then, of course, the question is that care high quality? Because we don't have kids into schools until 4 at the youngest. I'd like to see us do work having more in the 0 to 4 space, where we're taking care of kids a little younger than 4. There are various ways to talk about enhancing what we do for that population. One of those, again, is looking at the availability of high-quality child care. I did a bill several years ago to allow our CAPS program, working with DECAL and the Senate Education Committee, to allow our CAPS program, which partners, a state and federal partnership, helping subsidize child care. It came to my attention that an approved activity under CAPS was not getting a 2-year or 4-year higher education post-secondary degree. You could only get, you could be in certain fields, you could get a 1-year certificate, but you could not actually get an associate's degree and qualify for that program. You could not get a 4-year degree and qualify for that program. And it seemed to me that was, while we have lots of need, that also seemed wrong, because the more we can allow people to finish their education, the more they have the skill set to fully participate in the economy and climb the economic ladder, thereby benefiting themselves, their children, and the state. So that change with partnership with DECAL was made to allow people to qualify under a 2-year associate. So I thought that was a big deal. I hope to do more progress in that same area with child care and helping families complete their education. Thank you so much for having me.
I wanted to swing back down the line. And first of all, I also want to tell you there are question cards on your tables. If any of you have questions for anybody who's up here, write them down, hold them in the air, and then we have some very attractively dressed staffers who will grab them and bring them up. Also, I was going to give Chair Ballinger an opportunity to talk a little bit about the school safety issue. There were a couple of study committees over the summer, or the interim is probably a better way to say it, on school safety, and she was the vice chair of one of those committees, and so we've been talking about school resource officers, and we've been talking about guns and all that stuff, but I think the school safety study committees have some other stuff, and so I just wanted to see if she could just give us a high-flying view.
Okay, I did, there was one in the Senate, and there was also one in the House focusing on school safety. We heard from, as far as the House committee, which is the only one that I can speak to, although Senator Albers, I understand, kind of collaborated on some of the recommendations with the chair of our House committee, Rick Jaspers. But we heard from the Secret Service, we heard from national experts, we heard from local people, we also heard from local incidents that have been averted. We had an incident in Cherokee County that was averted. And it came down to focusing on mental health, focusing on security in the schools. How can we actually had the architects, the Georgia Association of Architects actually came and presented on how we can use physical means to increase security in our schools in the state of Georgia. So they're going to be partnering with our school districts across the state. And, we're also going to be enhancing that piece as far as the school mental health. A lot of our counselors are actually more geared towards and trained towards getting Johnny into college rather than, dealing with Johnny's depression. So the need for mental health services in our schools was also one of the pieces that we highlighted. So I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have, specifically related to the House Study Committee on School Safety. Thank you.
Okay, so now, you guys hear me? Okay, so since we seem to have one mic that works, I'll just be running around, which might make it yet more interesting, or you could be Vanna White, it's okay. We have a couple of questions here, and one of them is from Lynn McIntyre. Lynn, where are you? With the Georgia PTA. And she wants to know, is there any discussion on raising compulsory attendance age for students in high school? I don't know if anybody want to take that one? It would,
No? No. I'm really loud. So I really know very little about this, but the very tiny thing that I recall is that that has been pushed and filed a number of times, but it has not ever advanced. So certainly that is something that I support.
I'm going to circle back around if we get time for this one. This one is from Naila Ennis. Where are you? Over there. What is the plan or strategy to achieve permanency for older young people in foster care? And we have a couple of us that could get that one.
So, I think the biggest thing I have going on is our Connected by 21 program. And so I'm going to get Lamar Smith to come up here and talk about that a little bit. Come on, Lamar. Lamar is, at VFACS, is our chief expert on the well-being of folks, of the youth in our care, and I think certainly the person to speak about this issue.
Good afternoon. I didn't think I'd be up here today. During last year's legislative session, we are really excited. We passed extended foster care for children in foster care. I believe we're the 34th state to do it in the nation. And essentially what that means is the time that we had as young people to go to school, have part-time jobs, really forge those connections that we needed to ensure that we would stay successful, we want that same opportunity for our young people. And so the way that we are going to operationalize that in the division is called the Connections Unit. So we'll have a team specifically dedicated to work with young people 18 to 21 to ensure that they're safe, healthy, educated, employable, and connected by 21.
And so, of course, we have many of our children, most of our children, of course, are reuniting with their parents or family, and of course, others we obtain adoption and guardianship for. But the cases that we need to spend the most attention on are those in which we have young people who, for whatever reason, are going to leave our care, perhaps, and we need to, without an adopted home or without going back to their family, we have an obligation to make sure that they are connected to a community. And that's really what this is all about.
And I would be remiss if we didn't make a plug for foster homes who really are interested in working with and supporting our own youth in foster care. Many times we talk about young children, 0 to 5, even our elementary school age children, but we have a significant need to support our young people, 14 to 17, for many of them the most critical part of their life, the defining part of their life, to ensure that they are academically successful, connected to meaningful networks, positive networks, and to support them as they transition out of foster care. Thanks, sir.
So sorry. My whole life is just like a reality TV show. My editing director tells me. This question is from Irene Barton. Where are you, Irene? Oh, I'll move you there. With the COG Collaborative. And I'm going to back up because I think Chair Ballinger might need to answer this. I appreciate the recommendation of the School Safety Committee to provide more support for mental health services. How will this be funded? Counselors already have a tremendous caseload.
Well, I think as I mentioned, our school counselors sometimes do, sometimes don't have mental health training. It's not actually a requirement in school counseling to be a school counselor to receive actually mental health training. So that is something, although most of our school, I'm not knocking our school counselors, that's just the academic curriculum does not include a mental health component. So I think we're kind of looking outside of what we consider kind of the traditional school counseling. We're looking at funding. It's kind of, it all goes down to where you put your money. So we're looking at funding, and we're also looking at kind of setting some sort of metric for kind of baseline support for emotional and behavioral and mental health support in our schools. So that's that's kind of the two-pronged approach that we're looking at that, recognizing that a lot of our school counselors are not equipped to deal with mental health issues.
Great, I'm gonna ask one that I have, that I haven't heard anyone mention, but I've been a little bit distracted, so I may have missed something, no offense to anyone. There is a Senate study committee on the school calendar, which I know has had a lot of conversations over the years, changing the school calendar. People love that idea or hate that idea. And I was just wondering if any of you have any intel on whether there's going to be any movement on making the summers longer.
I don't know if the bill's been dropped, but I'll just kind of see.
I don't know if a bill's been dropped or not, but I'm gonna speak from my district standpoint, and we have a lot of dual enrollment students, which requires the block scheduling, and I know there would be some serious issues they would have if that summer was changed like that, so it's, like I said, I don't know if the bill's been dropped, or I haven't heard what I believe it was Senator Gooch that led that study committee. I haven't heard an update as to what his plans are moving forward, but I do know that's the dual enrollment's a big issue. So.
That's where I'm going to get my question. Can you guys hear me with that?
If I can comment, I actually am in support of the legislation. Have been a parent, and the struggles with school starting earlier and earlier each year becomes a struggle to me on parent and family. And especially when we push and say we want more time for families to be able to spend together during those summer months. And it seems like each year, you have school districts that are inching the date up to almost the first week in August. And so my point of view on it is being able to spend more family time together during those summer months, because when you're increasing the school starting back earlier and earlier, then that does not allow for more time to spend with family, and also to be able to travel and experience and explore things, and allowing the children to be more exploratory during those summer months. They're already, when they're in school, they're very rigorous work that's being done, and the teachers also need a break as well, because you remember, if the school is starting the first week of August, the teachers are having to come back even a week before that, so that cuts down on their time with spending with their families as well.
Okay, now we have, my mic's still on working.
You want this one, Polly?
Yes, I can just yell. And you guys can use the mic more than I am. So we have 5 talks. This one is from East Eddie Bales. Mr. Bales, okay, George here. How do you say it? Okay. Annette. Oh, sorry. Annette. Okay. This is your own investigation. And it says, Georgia has seen an increase in child suicide in the past few years. How will this epidemic be addressed, and what are we doing about this issue? Some of these questions are things that you can all do, like take notes and then come back. Pathway, this, that,
I sit on the State Child Fatality Review Board, so I work with Trevor Randall, one of your colleagues, on the State Child Fatality Review, and suicide is one of the issues that we've really taken a lot of hard look at. We recognize that there are a lot of things that we can do to make that better in the state of Georgia. One of the things that we've done is to dramatically increase some of the funding that we have for mental health and crisis counseling. It kind of partners nicely with some of the things that we've done with school safety, but that is one of the issues that we're doing. I know Director Keenan actually participated in several of the, they would have these kind of town halls in various communities. I hosted one in Cherokee County for my own community, And I also participated in one in Barrow County where they had just had, I think, 2 suicides that year. It was kind of earlier, but they had just recently had a couple of suicides in that county. So that is something that we're very aware of. And I would like to really give a shout out to Polly. Polly did some great videos. I don't know if any of y'all have seen those videos, but they were really, really awesome about suicide prevention. Some of them were geared towards parents, some of them were geared towards professionals like teachers, and some of them were geared towards the kids. So let's all give Polly a round of applause.
I'm just going to shout out where I can. Trevor Randall from the GDI was the brainchild of the whole project. And we had that talk about an interagency event that was DFACS, the GBI, the DOE, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, who am I forgetting? Voices, there's one more I'm forgetting. DFACS. But it was a big group effort, and if you would like the link, I'm sure we can send that link out, right?
Yes.
Staff? It's on our website too, but we'll also send it out in our thank you for you guys, because we want to help kids, and those are the kids, obviously, that are at the end of the rope. So I feel very strongly about all issues, but that one in particular. Okay, moving on to other questions. There's one that says, this is from Anissa Patton. Where are you, Anissa? Over there. What new policy is being introduced to address and protect transgender youth? Anybody know of anything? So we don't have one yet. Any legislation. And I haven't heard it. I mean, it's the beginning of session too, so I don't know what's to come. Do you particularly?
So we represent children who come into the Department of Family and Children Services care, either from protective orders or they're in foster care. We're starting to see more children who are transgender, and it's really difficult to deal with them. The policies, Mr. Rollins, I know you guys are working on some policies, but the policies aren't really there to protect transgender youth, and we're also seeing a higher rate of children who are transgender and LGBTQ who are threatening suicide, attempting suicide, running away. So I was hoping that this would be on the forefront this year. I know DFAC is supposed to be working on some policies, but I would like to see the legislature address it as well.
Polly, just to add to that, as part of the mental health suicide, particularly prevention effort, that has been addressed, and there's been some invitations, if you will, from that particular group and those advocates that work with them to get information from us about what to look for, some of the prevention efforts. We don't have any data at CFR as far as any, I shouldn't say successful suicides, but completed suicides is the term for that community, because we stop at 17, but we do know as far as 18, 19, those suicides are there. Where they are being captured is with the attempts. And just to add, for those that don't know, our data is coming out for 2017, but at the end of last year, the last numbers we captured, we had 44 reported suicides of youth up to age 17 in Georgia. But we know for that 44, we're still looking at over 1,500 attempts. So we're not stopping at the video that Polly helped us do. We're doing more of the prevention summits or town halls, if you will, that Chairwoman Ballinger mentioned. And again, for our folks that work under the dome, when we worked on this project along with others, the challenges, of course, funding, as everybody says, but if we can get somebody to sponsor, for example, we were trying to figure out over the summer if we could get the 30-second clips of these kids talking about being in crisis played in the movie theaters. That price tag was presented to me at about $25,000. GBI-CFR has no access to dollars for that to play. You think they would say, we're just going to do this because it's a public awareness piece. We don't have that. So everything we've produced as far as prevention, we have to use our free platform, social media and such. So anybody that wants to assist us in that, we are definitely open to that, as in we don't have a budget set aside for our prevention piece for CFR. Yes, ma'am.
I am Bonnie. I went on Lawmakers so they would show the videos, the suicide prevention videos. So, but I was trying to plot with Polly on who we knew that represented the movie theaters so we could get those videos in there. So certainly circle back with Mr. Moore and we'll work on that.
I think that's a great idea. For lobbies for Pine Oak. So any of y'all know any of the folks on that side? I'm gonna do a few more questions. After I poke myself in the face with the question card. This is from Gordon Draves. Gordon, where are you, man? Over there. Asthma is the #1 chronic cause of absenteeism from school and the #1 chronic cause of hospitalization. Secondhand smoke is a major trigger for asthma attacks. Are there major programs to get parents and other adults not to smoke around children?
I support an increase in the tobacco tax. We know that the research demonstrates that has the most impact on young smokers or about to be smokers. I think that'd be the #1 issue for prevention of starting smoking in young people.
This one's from Hannah Rosenfeld. Hannah, where are you? There you are. From the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities. How can we make sure that families have the supports needed to keep children with significant disabilities or medical needs at home, especially considering the waiting list for Medicaid waivers, like the NOW and COMP waivers under the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities?
I'll just talk about it just from the defects, man. So we've actually started a significant effort in this past year to reach out to do more in terms of specific assistance for parents with disabilities. So especially cognitive disabilities is what we often, developmental disabilities, often what we deal with. Too often, I think the statistics are rather frightening. If you are a parent with a cognitive disability or developmental disability, the likelihood of your child coming into foster care and the likelihood of your rights being terminated is extremely high. So I think one of the things that we did this past year is remind all of our staff that the Americans with Disabilities Act applies in the child welfare context, that we need to be doing specific and concrete parenting analyses, giving parents with disabilities more time to work a case plan, and really looking at the entire family. So oftentimes, if we have a parent with a developmental disability or cognitive disability, we can rely on a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle to step in and fill the gap, especially until that child can reach an age at which they're somewhat more self-sufficient. In terms of the sort of the Medicaid waiver issue, as you can imagine, one of the ongoing issues we have with our children in foster care who have significant disabilities is making sure that we are applying for those waivers early. We don't do that often enough. Too often we find that our staff are waiting until the child is 16 or 17 to apply for a waiver, Medicaid waiver, and so as a result they get kind of pushed to the waiting list. And Laura shared with me just the other day, we have a significant, a handful of, not a large number, about 55 children who are actually over the age of 21 who are still in our child welfare system custody because we're still struggling to get them a waiver so that they can receive ongoing services such as on a post home. So I do think that the issue of Medicaid waivers, the issue of especially the transition between childhood and adulthood for individuals with significant disabilities is one we need to be focused on.
I think we definitely need to look at the policies in some of the state departments when it comes down to processing the payment. Let's do for those providers for special needs providers. Because a lot of times you're a provider and you have had to deliver the services, and then you're waiting 30 days, 60 days, and your payment has to come in. It kind of discourages, and then the end user, which are our families, are the ones that are actually suffering the most by those payments not being processed. And I know those are some of the concerns and complaints that I've received.
Okay, this one is from, where are you? Dustin? Oh, over there, okay. And I'm having trouble with one of the words in this question, and I don't know if it's my glasses or the handwriting, but, in what ways is existing programming for the 18 and over group home youth designed to assist those with traumatic histories of trauma or histories of trauma and sexual trafficking?
And Lamar, you can chime in on this too. Lamar, if I go to that spur on everything. We have, especially with some of our, like for example, Methodist Children's Home in Goshen Valley, a number of our, Chris 180, a number of our providers who work with our youth who are between the ages of 18 and 21 especially, have significant trauma-informed focused cognitive behavioral therapy. There are some folks who are starting to do trust-based relational intervention. There are other significant, I'd say, trauma-focused therapies that we are using. Now, what's going to be interesting as we move into Family First is that one of the things we'll be able to use our 40 federal dollars for congregate care will be specifically for the youth between ages of 18 and 21, youth who anticipate that we're going to see even a greater focus of behavioral interventions for that group. I would think, and Lamar, you can add anything if you want to, but I would say that if there's one area in which we probably are doing a better than average job, it is in the area of being trauma-informed and providing that trauma-based cognitive behavioral therapy and similar therapies for that age category. Lamar, you got anything extra?
So I'm a country boy. Hopefully you all can hear me. So Director Rollins is correct. And as to further expound on the work that we're doing 18 to 21, this will allow us to access some federally reimbursable funds as we talk about a 40 or an extended foster care program. And what's significant and important when you begin to think about the needs of young people 18 to 21 is how do you ensure that they have, first of all, individualized case planning, but also they're in a housing setting that is conducive to their development and to their needs and to their safety. So what other things that we're excited about is expanding the range of housing opportunities for these young people who are 18 to 21. We know that many times certain patient settings can actually trigger past trauma, so it's important that we work with our case managers to be very specific and intentional and deliberate in the placement, or when you begin to think about 18 to 21, we like to say housing for our young people to ensure their safe transition to adulthood.
Thank you. While I've got the mic and I want to give it up, I'm surprised somebody's mentioned this. I just think it's important to mention. At the Eggs and Issues Breakfast is one of the Chamber of Commerce, it's a big event. I was so excited. Governor Kemp said that he wants to put a mental health counselor in every school, and Speaker Ralston said that really improving our mental health system is going to be a major focus of his legislative agenda this year. And with all the questions we've had surrounding mental health, behavioral health, and developmental disability issues today, that is just really refreshing to hear.
I'm going to do one quick question. I think we're probably going to wrap up a little bit early, if that's good with everyone. Everybody seems sated. This one says, last year, Georgia passed Erin's law, thank you, mandating requiring age-appropriate annual sex abuse prevention education in schools grades K through 9. This will be effective in preventing sex trafficking of our youth. And this is the part, this is from Carol Neal Rossi. Carol, where are you? There you are. Can some of the 2016 Amendment $2 be allocated to support schools implementing these programs? I don't remember what Amendment 2 is. The funding sex trafficking amendment. Does anyone have an idea or read on whether or not we can use those for? Yes, with the strip clubs. Oh, yeah, so there's no money in that fund because it's been tied up in court. So I guess that, there we are. Are they collecting money? I don't think they're collecting it right now. The Department of Revenue didn't issue because it's tied up in courts. So, well, there's that. That was very. And Carol's asking if any money can be provided to the schools, but I don't know if anybody here has the appropriation pen. So at this point, I think because, again, as I said, we're all seated, and because everybody's super busy tonight, so let's give our panelists a round of applause. I do want to do one quick thing. I do want to do a quick pass the mic and have each of you say one thing that you would like for all of these people to do to help you.
I don't know how many of you do not know who your personal representative and personal senator is. But please, by the end of the day, find out who those people are and talk to them about what you care about.
My first issue would be e-cigarettes, and I am State Senator Danny Jones representing Henry and DeKalb County.
I would just echo Representative Oliver. Find the personal cell phone number for your senator or representative.
Let's do something about isolation in rural Georgia. That's my biggest concern right now.
I would love for you guys to let us know how we can collaborate with you to improve things in your area as well as statewide.
I would like your support in our single parent 2-day event that will be coming to the state capitol March the 21st, which is Single Parents Day in the state of Georgia. And thanks to my Senate colleagues that carry the bill on the Senate side. But on March 22nd, we will actually be doing an awards recognition. And so I need for you all to send in nominations to nationallg.org for a single parent who is doing an outstanding job across the state of Georgia.
I would like to take Representative Oliver and Representative Trimmel's comment one step further, which is social media is a great and free way to raise awareness among your entire network about the importance of these issues, and telling your friends on Facebook, sending out a link of how you can find the representative, paying attention to what the Georgia government is doing, and letting your networks know on social media what the Georgia government is doing, good and bad, is certainly very needed.
I know nobody elected me dog catcher, but Syracuse, what I would like for you guys to do as the advocacy director of Voices is give these guys a round of applause. And thank you for taking the time to listen. And then the second thing I'd like for y'all to do is to sign up for our legislative updates, which you can go to our website and click and put your email on, and you will get I will regale you with the fun that we have at the State House every week. And we also do these terrifying videos called Polly's 2-minute takes, and they start this week. I think they start next week, Suzanne. They start like tomorrow. Our first one comes out, and then it'll be like on Tuesdays from then on. But it's It has a cult following. Just one step shy of Rocky Horror Picture Show. And then we have a lot of fact sheets, and if you look on your little agendas, you can see the full list of things that we have coming. And I will also give a shameless plug for a new video series we have coming out, which I've gotten some of you and I'll get others of you, on policymakers' childhoods, where I interview people about their childhoods and put together sweet little pieces so that you can learn more about the folks who are doing legislation for kids and where they might hail from. So it's a very sweet series. Other than that, oh my gosh, Chair Ballin's ready to get you, give your
No, I'm fine. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for sharing my children. Yay, we're adjourned. Can I say that? That's always the favorite. We're adjourned.